200 Ukrainian drone warfare specialists are now operating inside Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar, and Iran has no answer for what they brought with them. In 5 weeks, the Hormuz Chokepoint has gone from a crisis to a catastrophe for Tehran. And right now, a deal that nobody in Washington predicted is quietly rewriting the entire defense architecture of the Persian Gulf. This is the story of how Ukraine turned its survival into the world's most valuable military export, and why Iran's blockade strategy is already beginning to crack. We'll explain exactly how this happened, who agreed to what, and what it means for the 142 oil tankers still daring to move through the strait. Let's set the scene. We are now in the 5th week of Operation Epic Fury. Iran's naval and drone forces have transformed the Strait of Hormuz from the world's most important oil choke point into a shooting gallery. According to data compiled by the House of Saud analysis outlet on March 30th, tanker traffic through the strait has collapsed by 94.6%, down from 2,652 transits in March of last year to just 142 transits in the same period this year. Brent crude closed at $112.57 a barrel on March 28th, the highest point since the early 2020s energy crisis. And President Trump has issued a hard deadline: Iran must reopen the strait by April 6th, 2026, or face consequences he has described only as severe. The Gulf Cooperation Council states Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Oman have been burning through their most expensive air defense munitions, trying to stop the Iranian drone swarms. The primary Iranian weapon causing this havoc is the Shahed 136, which NATO forces have nicknamed Geranium-2. It is a delta-wing loitering munition with a range of approximately 2,500 kilometers, a cruising speed of around 185 kilometers per hour, and a 50-kilogram warhead. Iran has, according to the House of Saud report, fired more than 5,000 missiles and drones into the airspace of 6 GCC nations in the first month of the conflict alone. And there is now a faster, harder-to-kill version in the inventory, the Shahed 238, a jet-powered variant that flies approximately 3 times as fast. The Saudi response has relied heavily on the Patriot PAC-3 interceptor missile, a system priced at roughly $4 million per round, to destroy drones that cost Iran somewhere between $20,000 and $35,000 each. That exchange ratio is not sustainable. You do not win a war of attrition when your interceptor costs 100 times more than the thing it is intercepting. The Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System, or THAAD, is present in the region, but was never designed to engage low and slow drone targets at this density. The 48 F-35A fighter jet Saudi Arabia has on order will not arrive until 2029. And the United States, for reasons we will get to shortly, has not yet filled that gap. This is where things start to shift in a very unexpected direction. On March 27th, Ukraine and Saudi Arabia signed a formal defense cooperation agreement in Jeddah. According to Fortune magazine on March 28th, and confirmed by Breaking Defense the same day, this was the first defense agreement Kyiv has ever signed with a Gulf state. It was followed immediately by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's unannounced visits to the UAE and Qatar on March 28th and 29th. Both of those nations signed their own agreements. Qatar's covering a full 10 years, with UAE's expected to be formalized within days. According to the Kyiv Independent on March 30th, the agreements include direct weapons exports. Saudi Arabia has already contracted for Ukrainian-manufactured interceptor munitions, and negotiations for a far larger deal are underway. Then Zelensky addressed the British Parliament on March 18th, where he confirmed what had previously only been reported as a rumor. 201 Ukrainian citizens, he said, are currently deployed and operational across the Middle East and the Gulf. A further 34 specialists are prepared and ready to join them. He confirmed that naval drone platforms, Ukraine's Magura 5 unmanned surface vessel, or USV, form part of the agreements. And he said something that cut straight to the heart of the Iran-Russia relationship: the Shahed drones being shot down over Saudi Arabia and Qatar contain Russian-manufactured components. This is not a coincidence. This is an integrated supply chain. But before we get to that, this is a quick reminder that you're watching Hormuz Chokepoint. We bring you the full picture, not just the headlines. So hit subscribe to ensure you stay ahead of the curve. Now let us walk through exactly what Ukraine is bringing to the table, because it is more sophisticated and more cost-effective than anything the Gulf states have been able to field on their own. The first dimension of Ukraine's offer is the interceptor drone program. According to an analysis by the Gulf International Forum, published on March 27th, Ukraine has scaled its drone manufacturing to a rate exceeding 10,000 interceptor units per month. The unit cost ranges from $800 to $3,000 per platform. Zelensky stated publicly that Kyiv is capable of delivering up to 1,000 interceptor drones per day to international partners. Compare that to a single Patriot PAC 3-round at $4 million. 2 or 3 Ukrainian interceptor drones can engage and destroy one Shahed 136 for a combined cost of under $10,000, a margin of efficiency that makes Saudi Arabia's current defensive posture look economically ruinous. Zelensky said it plainly before the British Parliament: this is cheaper than any solution our partners are currently using. The second dimension is electronic warfare, or EW. Ukrainian engineers have spent 3 years in the most drone-dense battle space in military history. They have developed and continually refined jamming and spoofing systems, specifically calibrated against the Shahed's guidance architecture. Now here is the critical vulnerability the Iranians have not yet fixed. The Gulf variant of the Shahed has not been hardened against the kind of electronic countermeasures Ukraine deploys. The units in the Black Sea theater have been progressively upgraded as Russia and Iran exchanged lessons learned. But the drones Iran is deploying over the Gulf right now are operating on software and hardware suites that Ukrainian EW operators can disrupt. This window will not stay open forever. But right now, it is wide open. And this is where things get even more serious for Tehran. The third dimension is the Magura 5 naval drone. The Magura is not an interceptor, it is a hunter. It is an unmanned surface vessel, or USV, measuring approximately 5.5 meters, with a top speed of around 42 knots. Its standard payload is a 200-kilogram warhead. The upgraded variant carries an R-73 air-to-air missile adapted for surface launch, specifically to engage low-flying drones and helicopters over open water. The Magura has already sunk multiple Russian naval vessels in the Black Sea, including corvettes and patrol boats, and has done so at a fraction of the cost of conventional anti-ship operations. In the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, where Iran's naval USV force has attacked at least 21 civilian vessels. Since March 2nd, the Magura represents a direct counter to Tehran's own surface drone doctrine. Ukraine also offers the Katran, a heavier USV equipped with torpedoes, a minigun system, shoulder-fired surface-to-air missile launchers or manpads, and an integrated EW suite. The Katran was designed specifically for contested coastal water environments. That description fits the Strait of Hormuz precisely. What comes next could change everything, because Ukraine has not just sold hardware. It has sold doctrine. The fourth dimension, and arguably the most consequential, is human capital. Those 201 Ukrainian specialists are not advisors sitting in briefing rooms. According to the House of Sode report, cross-referenced with Zelensky's parliamentary address, they are embedded in operational units, training Saudi Emirati and Qatari operators in the same anti-drone tactics that have destroyed thousands of Russian drones over Kyiv, Odessa, and Kharkiv. An additional 30 specialists are preparing to deploy to Jordan and Kuwait. Ukraine is effectively establishing a regional drone defense network with Kyiv as the technical and doctrinal hub. This is a geopolitical transformation disguised as a defense contract. Now that is not even the worst part for Washington's original plan, because the reason Ukraine ended up filling this role instead of the United States is a story of spectacular diplomatic mismanagement. According to an Axios report from March 10th, Zelensky had already attempted to bring this offer to Washington. In August of 2025, he presented a formal briefing complete with a PowerPoint presentation to officials at the White House, warning that Iranian Shahed technology was proliferating toward Gulf targets. and that Ukraine could provide asymmetric countermeasures at scale. The response per Axios' sourcing was that Trump's team passed it to a working group that did nothing with it. Then came the extraordinary story broken by the Financial Times on April 1st and confirmed by both the Kyiv Independent and the Jerusalem Post. Trump, frustrated by European NATO members' reluctance to contribute forces to a Hormuz opening operation, threatened to suspend weapons transfers to those allies through the Priority Ukrainian Reinforcement Logistics, or PURL program. The intention was coercion: do your part in the Gulf or lose your arms pipeline. The effect was the opposite of what was intended. European capitals, furious at being threatened, doubled down on their refusal. And the Gulf monarchies, watching Washington attempt to weaponize its own alliance system, accelerated their conversations with Kyiv. Ukraine did not poach these clients. Washington pushed them away. We'll be explaining what the full strategic fallout of that diplomatic rupture looks like in our upcoming coverage of the NATO-Gulf relationship shift. But for now, let us focus on what it means for Iran. Tehran's Hormuz strategy was premised on a specific assumption that the Gulf states would be dependent on American military technology, American political will, and American timelines. If the US hesitated, the GCC would hesitate. If American weapons were expensive and slow to deliver, the blockade would hold. If the diplomatic cost of US intervention was too high, Iran could sustain pressure indefinitely. That calculus is now broken. Ukraine has demonstrated that a non-NATO, non-American supplier can provide effective, affordable, and immediately deployable drone defense at industrial scale. The 10-year defense agreements with Saudi Arabia and Qatar are not just procurement contracts, they are a structural shift in how the Gulf conceptualizes its security relationships. Iran's drones are now being engaged by doctrine technology and operators who have spent 3 years in a higher intensity drone war than anything Tehran has ever conducted. The Shahed 238 jet variant remains a challenge. Its speed makes acoustic detection and optical intercept harder. But Ukrainian engineers are already analyzing the signature data being collected in real time. They have adapted to Russian drone evolution continuously. The Gulf variant gives them a new dataset, and they will adapt again. Tehran is watching a scenario it did not model: its most asymmetric weapon being neutralized by an adversary it did not consider. Iran spent years studying American Patriot batteries. It never wargamed against Kyiv. The reeling nature of Iranian strategic communication in recent days, contradictory statements about the Strait escalatory threats, paired with signals of negotiation, suggests exactly the kind of institutional panic that sets in when a plan stops working. What Iran does before Trump's April 6th deadline and what Ukraine's specialists do in the 72 hours after will determine whether this conflict expands into a direct US military operation or whether a Ukrainian-led drone defense network quietly becomes the decisive factor in reopening the world's most important waterway. Neither outcome was in anyone's original script. For a deeper look at how Ukraine's Magura 5-5 has already reshaped naval warfare in the Black Sea, and what that means for Persian Gulf operations, find out more in our video on Ukraine's naval drone revolution. And if you enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe to Hormuz Chokepoint to see more of our coverage of Operation Epic Fury. And thank you as always for watching.